He ran for office as the man of the people, but as President Obama sold out Wall Street, or sold out to Wall Street, I should say. A new in-depth look at the president's economic team in Rolling Stone magazine offers an unsettling perspective on the trillions in taxpayer money handed out in the past and used to this day by the big banks to exploit an extraordinary advantage over every other business in the world. At the heart of the matter, the very people who created the systems that enriched themselves, torpedoed the American economy, and allowed them to perpetrate the largest insurance fraud and now ongoing cover-up in the history of the world. They are some of the president's closest advisors as well. It is indeed complicated, but this is only where the story begins. Here to help us sort this story out as we move forward, Matt Taibbi, writer for Rolling Stone. Latest article, Obama's Big Sellout hits newsstands today. Christian Freeland, managing editor for Financial Times, with us as well. And from the Washington Post, Jonathan Capehart. Matt, what's your lead?
Well, basically what we did is we looked at the fact that Obama, when he was running, he was advised by people like Austin Goolsbee and Karen Kornbluh, who's sort of a well-known economic progressive, on economic matters. But as soon as he got elected, he brought in a team of Wall Street guys to run his economic policy, beginning with his old his college classmate Michael Froman from Citigroup. And he brought in a whole team of people who are connected to Bob Rubin, who, of course, had been in the Clinton White House and had run Goldman Sachs and had been at Citigroup. And it's these people who ran the Obama White House for the first year and determined the entire economic policy.
What is the common thread, whether you mentioned Goolsbee and Kornbluh, we'll throw Paul Volcker in there as another person who was sort of in and then was pushed out. Yeah. What is the common thread that you see with those who were pushed out?
Well, they all were in favor of much tighter regulations and punitive actions against Wall Street and tightening up, for instance, the derivatives market and all these things. Whereas the Rubinites who were brought in, intellectually, they all believed very strongly in deregulation and keeping the government off Wall Street as much as possible. Right. And it was those people who were put in charge. And there was also a lot of hesitation about bailouts among the old team. Whereas the new team, led by Tim Geithner and Rubin and all these people, were very much in favor of the bailouts, and they basically continued the Bush policy without any interruption.
Right. And it's just to avoid the echo chamber, because I suspect we're going to agree largely on a lot of these things, but did you get any insight as to, when you put yourself on the other side of the table, put yourself in the Bob Rubin chair, put yourself in the Tim Geithner chair, what do they believe? In other words, if they don't believe that, hey, we're just going to perpetrate a giant insurance fraud and take all the money, which we would hope that that's not what's at the top of their head, even though that's what it appears to be to us, what do they think they're doing?
Well, I think they genuinely believe that the economy is a self-correcting mechanism, that if they got Wall Street humming again, that everything would spread out to the rest of the population. It didn't really turn out that way. What ended up happening is they gave a massive amount of money to Wall Street to prop it up again, and Wall Street kept it. And that's where we are right now.
Christian, go ahead.
Actually, I want to challenge that a little bit, if I may, Matt, both in terms of whether there has been this total personnel shift and also what the thinking is of Obama's current economic team.
Sure.
You know, I do think there's actually quite a lot of continuity as well as change. Someone like Jason Furman has been there the whole time, and he has been close to Larry Summers throughout. Right. Now, Larry, who is, I think, you know, the central economic thinker, was a Clinton Secretary of the Treasury. I think it would have been quite awkward for him to be part of the Obama team right away.
He was also the head of the Hamilton Project, which is a Rubin thing.
Yeah. Right, but was also a Jason Furman thing. I'm just saying that I don't think the distance between these two groups is as great as maybe
there is a fundamental question here, and in my own analysis, I try to figure out, like, okay, I look at this as crazy, but then they believe, I think, that it is better for the economy to have an active derivative market that is subsidizing the price of housing, subsidizing the price of food, subsidizing the price of energy, and creating a big profit center for the banks who sell those derivatives against these products using other people's money. They fundamentally believe that's a better economy. That's one version of it. I mean, what do you think the other side thinks, Christia?
Well, I just think that particularly, you know, say of the people that we had on the screen with Tim Geithner, Peter Orszag, and Larry Summers, I think, first of all, there are disagreements within that group, and these are not
between Summers and the rest of them, I think.
What do you think the big disagreement is?
Between Geithner and the rest of them, and I think that Larry Summers shouldn't be mischaracterized as believing in sort of the echt Rubin view of the late 1990s. You know, Larry.
Even if he did vote, even presidents.
The facts change.
Of course, I agree.
My mind,
absolutely.
Right? You know,
totally.
and I think that Larry, you know, as an economist, actually was one of the early critics of this efficient market hypothesis. He's written a lot of papers on how markets are not always efficient, and there are moments when they don't work, when there are stupid people.
But Matt's ultimate point is that we have all of these people that are still perpetuating a policy that is supportive of the banking system, for sure, regardless of who's in there, and an economy that has small business lending off a cliff, profits back at a record on Wall Street, 1 in 7 mortgages delinquent. You know, I can go on and on with the statistics, but basically the American economy was torpedoed and the financial markets were supported. And the reality, Matt, is it's far more profitable not to lend money in this country. Yeah, the fact of the matter is we're giving banks money at a time when the government has set rules that say, you can make more money if we give you money if you don't lend it.
Right.
And that is the inherent insanity of the entire situation. It's like giving the banks money, legalizing the banks to make money without having to lend it is like letting the cops create a military state. They're the custodians of wealth or the custodians of security have been completely compromised. You think it's the people around the president that are largely responsible for that, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you have to remember that probably if you were going to have a Nuremberg for the financial crisis, Bob Rubin would be one of the first people on the dock. I mean, he has a unique responsibility for what went wrong because he was not only responsible for the bad policy, deregulatory policy under Clinton, but he also helped destroy one of the biggest companies in the world in Citigroup, and yet he was the guy who was put in charge and his people of being the architect of Clinton's economic policy.
I think he's got a great point, and I was a Rubin. I mean, listen, Bob Rubin is incredibly, obviously, very accomplished, intelligent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they had an idea, which was, we will create a hyper-efficient system. We will create the most efficient financial system in the history of the world. As long as it doesn't collapse, we won't have a problem. But it's like an efficient sports car. It goes around the track real fast, and then it blows into the wall. But if you're able to bail out and give the crash to the taxpayer...
I just think we need to be careful because Bob Rubin isn't in the White House right now. And, and the big bailout of Wall Street, we have to really be clear, wasn't Obama's bailout. The bailout of Wall Street was Hank Paulson's bailout. It happened under a Bush presidency. That's when the TARP happened. It was last fall.
There's no question that the car hit the wall last year.
And
but there's also no question that the decision...
Tim Geithner was intimately involved with the bailouts every step of the way.
That is absolutely right, and it was Obama's choice to keep him, but it wasn't Obama's White House.
But let him finish. Go ahead, Matt.
Obama got elected on the day after he got elected. He put up 2 Citigroup executives in charge of the economic transition team, especially Froman. 2 weeks later, they do a gigantic bailout of Citigroup. And that very same day, those Citigroup executives hired Tim Geithner to be the Treasury Secretary. I mean, it's an absolute.
And I'll make it worse, Christian. I would say Tim Geithner, as the head of the New York Federal Reserve since 2003, as the bank regulator in New York over these banks, at a time when the banks are accumulating leverage, at a time when the swaps market is continuing to get crazier and crazier, that these people believe implicitly or explicitly that type of modeling is somehow good for America.
No, look,
they've done it for over a period of years.
Don't get me wrong. I've written a piece today complaining about how the guys at Goldman Sachs think that they are Ayn Rand characters. Yep. But I just think we have to be careful to get our facts right. So, for example, if we talk about Citigroup, these actions were taken when Obama was not yet in office. And I think one of the original sins about the financial bailout was there should have been more strings attached. If you look at the strings that Warren Buffett attached to the money that he lent to Goldman Sachs, he got a better deal than the U.S. Treasury did.
But to allow the continued funding of the banks under the counsel of the Obama advisory team and not come out with a windfall profits tax to take back the profits that are being made this year and all the bank CEO compensation for the past 10 years, because those people were paying themselves to accumulate risk that they couldn't accumulate because they legalized doing that. And the fact of the matter is, and I think Matt's onto something, is there's a good question to be asked, which is, why is it we're not seeing a windfall profits tax? Why is it we're not seeing a restoration of the rules of lending and investing? And the question you're asking is maybe, the answer you're positing is, maybe the reason you're not getting that is because the people advising the president don't want us to have that.
And also, you have to look at the way the financial regulatory reform was what the White House's proposals were on that this fall. All the things that Tim Geithner sent to the Hill were very, there were really soft touches on Wall Street. There was sort of a permanent bailout mechanism written into the resolution authority portions of the House bill. After the fact. And it required a sort of open revolt in the House to get those measures killed or watered down. That was the White House's position. They wanted to have basically an automated future bailout system.
So that I can basically pay myself out, torpedo the system, and then everybody everybody, whoever's left has to pay. It's totally nuts. And that was a Geithner.
It was a built-in safety net for the top 25 banks in the country.
I think that financial reform has not gone far enough.
And that's all because of that was these people who were writing these bills.
So the issue that you take, Christian, is to say, but be cautious in assigning particular blame to Larry Summers or to Bob Rubin at this point, because we don't have enough information to know who's doing or did what. But we know that what's gone on has been directly offensive and destructive to America and directly beneficial to the banking system.
Yeah, I mean,
we just got to figure out who and why.
I think bailing out the financial system, no matter what your politics, we have to be glad that that happened, because we didn't have a second Great
I disagree.
Depression.
I would say that's like putting out a house on fire. We got to be glad we put the house out on fire.
Right,
but I'm more concerned about the fact that the people building our houses build houses that burn everybody in them down every 10 years, and everybody wants to act like the fire was an accident, and the fire wasn't an accident. The fire was started consciously by individuals 10 years ago, and it came home. That's my issue.
It's also the repeat of a pattern. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time we've bailed out Wall Street. You go back to the peso crisis, the long-term capital management,